And today there's another very important about Gog and Magog. What is this about? What is the importance of this scripture in this end time? And who are the Gog and the Magog, as the book of Ezekiel chapter 38 revealed to every one of us? And what are the significance, or maybe we can also see that the signs of this prophecy, when is it going to be fulfilled, or how close is this? And you can see this coalition. Is this formed? When is this going to be formed? And when are they going to attack Israel? So this is the prophecy that have been spoken for more than 2,000 years. Actually, during the time of Daniel, it was the 6th century BC. So we have seen the prophecy already spoken for more than 2,500 years. And today, you and I begin to see it's nearly come to pass. And the reason why that we are saying so, and you can see that on June 22nd, 2025, when the US surprisingly and quickly bombed Iran nuclear facility. And then recently, you and I begin to see that Syria also declared to attack Israel. Now, pay attention to the nation, Iran, and then Iran, and then Israel. And then we also heard another country is Turkey. And Turkey have been also been a close cooperation with Iran and Russia. And now we also hear a lot of war between Russia and Ukraine. And all of these things begin to reveal something very significant. But at the same time, President Trump, in his first term, he also established what we call the Abraham Accords in the Middle East, including the country like UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and today even Egypt and other countries as well. So, does this event spoken in the Bible? Or what does it tell us according to the biblical prophecy? And that is exactly what you and I are going to read today and to study and to explore together. And let us open together in the book of Ezekiel chapter 38. But let me also give you a quick background about the book of Ezekiel, or about the prophet Ezekiel. He was the prophet among the Jewish exiles in Babylon. And today is modern day Iraq. And his ministry spanned from 539 BC to 571 BC, before the fall of Jerusalem in 586 BC. So we see that he lived and ministered around the 6th century BC. And here in the book of Ezekiel, it's very complicated. And it's also a lot of prophecies as well. But basically, as we read, we know that Ezekiel prophesied about God's judgment on Israel and Judah. And it's happened. And after that, we know with the destruction of Jerusalem, that was also the prophecy had been spoken through Ezekiel as well. And then Ezekiel also talked about the restoration and hope for Israel in the end time through the story of the dry bone in Ezekiel chapter 37. And then today we are going to talk about Gog and Magog coalition in the book of Ezekiel chapter 38. Ezekiel also prophesied about the rebuilding of the temple and the future temple worship from chapter 40 to 48. And we already learned about that science or that prophecy about the rebuilding of the third temple. And especially, Ezekiel also prophesied the division of the land among the 12 tribes. It also talked about the return of the lost tribe. And today we know that we still have about 10 or at least about 9.5 lost tribes have not coming back. So if the temple being rebuilt and then the land was once again being divided among the 12 tribes. So in other words, he is speaking about the return of all of the lost tribes coming back to Jerusalem one day in the near future. Now let us read together in the book of Ezekiel chapter 38, and with the topic that we are talking about, Gog and Magog coalition. Verse 8, 38 verse 1 said, "The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set your face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince, Meshach and Tubal, prophesy against him, and say, this is what the sovereign Lord said, I'm against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with your whole army, your horses and your horsemen fully armed, and a great horde with large and small shield, all of them brandishing their swords. Persia, Cush, and Put will be with them, all with shield and helmet. Also Gomer with all troop, and Beth Togarmah from the far north, and with all its troop, the many nations with you." In verse number 8, you see the mention of the name Persia, or the country Persia, Cush, Put will be together with Gog and the Magog. And some of the events that I just mentioned to you, that about Iran, about Turkey, and some of later on we will learn about Syria, Lebanon, Libya, and you are going to see about Ethiopia and some of the northern African nations. It will be perfectly fit according to Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 5 here and 6 here. Get ready and be prepared, you and all the gather about you, and take command of them. After many days you will be called to arms. In future years you will invade a land that has recovered from war, whose people will gather from many nations to the mountain of Israel. Which country is that? The Bible mentioned very clear, Israel, which was the country that had been recovered from war, and whose people were gathered from many nations. And in 1948, May 14, as you know, that God had brought the Israelites back to the land and established the nation. And this is what the prophecy had been revealed and fulfilled. And I already shared to you about those things. So I just try to remind you so that we can see that how close we are to the end time. And they have been brought out from the nation, and now all of them live in safety. Now pay attention to that. And all of the Israelites live in safety. And the question is, when? Is it now? Or when is it going to happen? But let us give a very quick recap here. As you can see in the book of Ezekiel chapter 38, you and I begin to see God through Ezekiel spoken about the coming invasion of Gog and Magog coalition, which include Persia, including Cush, including Put, including Sheba and Dedan, and include some of the North African nations. What are those countries? Is this coalition have been formed? Let's begin to learn about Gog and Magog. Let us know what is it and why is it coalition is going to be very powerful. Now, in Ezekiel chapter 38 from verse 1 to 6, Gog, or we call the chief prince, command Ezekiel to prophesy. Our God command Ezekiel to prophesy against Gog, the chief prince or the leader of Magog and the allies. And then in verse number 7 to verse 9, we see that the Gog's coalition, not God, Gog, coalition comes like a storm from the north after many years. And they begin to attack a peaceful Israel. In verse number 10 to verse number 18, we see that the motivation, the reason why the Gog and Magog coalition want to attack Israel because of greed, because of plunder. They want to get things from Israel. They are jealous of what Israel has with the technology today, with the economic development, with all the wealth they have, or maybe the country. And because of the hatred. In verse number 17 to verse 23, we see that God begins to declare His opposition and His intervention through the natural phenomenon and through the confusion of the invaders. So that is a recap and a summary of the book of Ezekiel chapter 38. So that we will begin to see that this prophecy already spoken more than 2,500 years ago, almost 2,600 years. Now God, according to Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 2, we just read a while ago, is a chief prince of a powerful or a powerful leader in the end time. So the name God is not the land or the country or the region, but it refers to a leader. And for sure, in this modern time, if we want to have a coalition, there must be a powerful leader. Who could be that leader? Or who could be called as God? And here we see that is mentioned Magog, or the land of God, right? So meaning to say the leaders would be the leaders or the president or the prime minister of this country or of this nation. So Magog was the son of Japheth, and Magog became the founder of the northern and the northeastern nation. Could you please guess which country is in the north and northeastern of Israel?
Russia.
Yes, we know that it's Russia, or maybe also Ukraine, right? Of course, Russia, we know. Russia, it is the region of north of Israel, generally referred to as Russia, and some part of the Central Asia. And some of the study even include some part of China. And it is very interesting. If we also include China, and you can also begin to imagine this could be Russia or China who could lead this coalition. And many of the explanations today even begin to point to the role of China in Magog as well. It's a coalition between this nation in Russia, Central Asia. And Josephus identified Magog with the Scythians, nomadic people of southern Russia. And for those like our brother Arthur, they will understand better about these people in the Western Europe over there, or even Eastern Europe. But we can see that these are the people in the steep north of the Black Sea. And Russia also lies to the north and northeast of Israel. So we hear another name according to Ezekiel chapter 38, we just read a while ago, Meshach and Tubal. Now Meshach and Tubal are a word, the descendant of Japheth also. So Meshach was the ancient Mushki people, or we call Mushki tribe, who lived in Asia Minor or Turkey today, in the modern central and eastern Turkey. And Tubal was a region in eastern Anatolia, also Turkey today. So now you begin to see some of these countries are closely related to Turkey. So why Turkey? And also Iran. Why is Iran? This will lead us to the next topic, is that the coalition, or we call the Gog and Magog coalition, which have been prophesied. What are the countries included in this coalition? And the reason why there was joining this coalition, or what is the purposes, or what are the purposes of this coalition? Now, Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 5, we just read a while ago. It includes Persia, Cush, and Put will be with them, and all with shield and helmets. And later, we also know that some part of Sheba and Dedan, or which is part of Yemen today, and Saudi Arabia today. But in the end time, the God will lead this coalition of nations to attack and plunder Israel. So very obviously, we know Iran is Persia, or we call Persia is Iran, modern Iran today. Cush was the descendant of Ham, and is now Sudan and part of the southern Ethiopia, and is also include Eritrea or ancient Kush in the south of Egypt. So we are going to see that this coalition also begin to include what? Sudan today, or we call Kush or Sudan today, and maybe some part of Ethiopia as well. And then Put was also the descendant of Ham. It is now Libya and part of North Africa. Do we see these countries are coming together to attack Israel? At least we know that Libya, Sudan always have the conflicts with Israel. For sure, Iran and Turkey have a lot of conflicts with Israel. And even recently, Syria also even want to have more conflicts with Israel as well. And then there's another name, it's called Gomer. And Gomer was also the descendant of Japheth and associated with people around the Black Sea or Anatolia, also part of Turkey. It also includes the Western Turkey and Eastern Europe. So if we talk about Eastern Europe, some other people even think not only Russia but also Ukraine or even Germany today. So Gomer is associated with Cimmerian. For those who want to understand more, you can make a study more about this one. Cimmerians are the tribes in Eastern Europe, and possibly they settle around in modern Ukraine and Turkey today. And Gomer also suggests to the Germany or the Germanic peoples according to the book of Jeremiah chapter 51 verse 27. So if German involved, how is it possible? We don't know, because it's part of EU. How EU is going to involve? Is that for positive or negative? We don't know. But these are the biblical prophecies mentioned about all of those countries. And then another name is that Togarmah was also the descendant of Gomer. So it's also included some of the Eastern Europe part here. So Bet Togarmah include the Eastern Turkey, Caucasus, and Armenia, and Georgia as well. And especially if you heard about the ship of Tarshish, right? About that idiom, it will talk about the successful trade that go out from Spain in those days. So it might also include Spain, because it was a place where we know about the ship of Tarshish. Or the house of Tagoma, traditionally linked with the peoples of Caucasus and Anatolia. So that is the biblical prophecy. And it's also mentioned another two names, which is Sheba in the modern day of Yemen, and another place that we call Dedan, or the modern Saudi Arabia in the Gulf state or part of the Arabian Peninsula. Peninsula. Okay. And this one is very, very interesting. The Bible said that these countries, like Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, or we call Sheba and Dedan, they do not engage in this war, but they may protest against Israel verbally. Does it ring the bell? It will lead us to what we call today is the Abraham Accord. And these countries like Egypt, Sheba or Dedan, or we call UAE, and we have other countries begin to be included in the Abraham Accord. They may not like Israel, but for peace sake, that they signed the peace treaty together. And today, in the Abraham Accord, we see that like UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, Sudan, and other countries already signed the peace treaty. And especially even Egypt is also made a historic peace partner since the Camp David Accord. So we see that the prophecy, biblical prophecy, has been fulfilled, and these things are already happening. The question is today, how is this coalition in the modern time? Does it happen yet? Is it really formed, or are they at the beginning stage? Let's begin to discover a little bit. Now we see Russia, Iran, Turkey. These are the countries that we just mentioned in the book, Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 2, verse 5 a while ago. It includes Russia, it includes Iran, it includes especially Turkey, have been the close ally in the recent years. Russia and Iran cooperate military, and they also build up military in Syria. We see that Russia, Iran, and Turkey also join hands concerning the Astana process for Syria. So we see that these countries, including in Sudan and Lebanon and all of these countries, Ethiopia, begin also to take a little bit move in order to join them. And Iran openly called for Israel destruction and funds even terror groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, which we have seen in the last few years. Turkey, under Erdogan, has become increasingly hostile toward Israel and supporting anti-Zionist rhetoric. And Russia has pulled its part neutral stand and support Israel enemies in Syria and Iran. All of these countries are mentioned in the book of Ezekiel that we just read a while ago. But now we are going to see that even Russia provides military technology to Iran. And Iran and Turkey support various militias across the Middle East like Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon. And North African nations like Libya or Sudan or Kush also increasingly cooperate with Russia and Iran. Recently, with the war that happened in Russia and Ukraine, we can see a close tie between Iran and Russia. How many of you know that? Do you know that many of the drones that have been sent to attack to Russia in order to attack Ukraine was made by Iran? And not only that, you are going to see something very astonishing here. Iran provides thousands of Shahid, 136 loitering munition drones, and manufacturing aid to Russia. That was the beginning. But later on, Iran even provides drone designs and technical knowledge for Russia to set up its own drone factory at Alabuga in Tatarstan through the 1.75 billion deal. So you see, even though they have not officially signed this coalition, but you can see that all of these countries already working together. When they are going to officially sign that coalition, I'm going to explain a little bit later on. But the Gog and Magog coalition, even though not yet fully formed through the official pact or treaty or coalition, as we said, but there are already so many cooperation between these countries, and especially we can see that they show hostility to Israel. And they even want to wipe Israel out of the map of the world. So that leads to the next question. When will this coalition attack Israel? Or possibly, when are they going to form? No one knows exactly the time this coalition will attack Israel fully. But the attack has already begun, and the signs of this coalition formation are growing stronger and stronger in recent years. And I just explained to you about the cooperation, about the military cooperation, about the support and especially about the hatred to Israelite and the intention to destroy Israel. It could not be more obvious. In addition, the Bible also revealed that it is when the Israel dwell securely according to Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 8 we read a while ago. The question today, is Israel dwell securely? Not yet. We know that Israel is powerful right now. Since 1948, it's grown and become very powerful and strong in military through the IDF, Iron Dome, cyber capability. They also enjoy the regional peace treaty like Abraham Accords, and that is what we can see something about the biblical prophecy being fulfilled right now. You see that more and more countries begin to involve or join in the Abraham Accords. And this accord is to provide peace and stability for Israel. Even though right now it has not been completely peaceful yet. But more and more countries to get involved to protect Israel. So we could see that maybe it's very near. We don't know exactly as I said. But at least the Bible said that at the moment when Israel dwells securely, and this one will point to what we call a peace deal between this coalition together with the Abraham Accord pact. When is it going to happen? I don't know. But I can see it is not going to be very long, because all of these are leading to those coalition formation, but also leading to the pact or the peace treaty. It could be happen at any time. You see that some of the country, like we just see Afghanistan and recently with the peace deal, after so many decades, and suddenly President Trump just came and called the leader together and they signed the peace deal, right? After so many years. And things can happen just after weeks. And then another country that we can also know in Africa recently that have had war for so many years. And then President Trump also stepped in and began to do the mediation and negotiation. And then just a few weeks ago, maybe 1 month ago, if I'm not mistaken, in June, they also signed the peace treaty with one another. So in other words, this could be happen very fast, or it could take another few years, I don't know. But all of the setup, the preparation, the signs, the evidence have been revealed, as I just explained to you a while ago. And as the fourth and very important things that we should ask, will this coalition win over Israel? For sure. We just read the scripture a while ago. Israel is not going to be destroyed by the military might of this Gog and Magog coalition. You could imagine if, we don't know exactly, but if China and Russia and Iran, the three powerful nations, are combined together and then include their allies in order to attack Israel, could you imagine how powerful it was? Or how powerful it is? It is horrible. It is horrible. It's powerful. It's a large army will come in order to attack a very small country with a few millions people. But the Bible said Israel is not going to be destroyed by the military might of this Gog and Magog coalition. Why? Because Israel survived this attack as well to many attacks by the mighty hand of the Almighty God. It is always the divine intervention that saved Israel throughout its existence, and especially since the re-establishment of Israel as a nation in 1948. Ezekiel 39 begins to explain to us how horrible or terrifying it is for this war and why Israel won this coalition by the hands of God. Ezekiel chapter 39 from verse 1 to 8. God promised to defeat God and scatter his army. Then in verse 9 and 10 it will tell us that the weapons will be burned for 7 years. Could you imagine? It's going to be the ongoing war. Maybe it take place for 7 years. So the weapons continue to be used. And after that, it will be destroyed. And then from verse 11 to 16, the Bible said, the burial of the dead will last for 7 months. Could you imagine how many people will die? For 7 months. How many of us still remember about the COVID-19 2020? And at that time, that you can see that many funeral houses have a lot of corpses lined up. And many people have to wait for weeks before those corpses being buried properly. Because so many people died in COVID 2020. But now, you can see that COVID-19 only a few weeks, then people will at least will be cremated or burned or whatever, and then will be buried. But here, this war, after this war, it will take about 7 months in order to take care of all of the dead body. And even the bird and the beast of the white field can also join the feast on the fallen armies, on the dead body. And verse 29 to 21 to 29, we talk about the glory of God being revealed, and the nation will recognize God, and Israel will be revived. And here we are also going to see in the book of Ezekiel chapter 39, is not Israel power that can defeat this coalition, but how God can use different natural phenomena in order to destroy this coalition. How? God sends the massive earthquake in verse number 18 and 19. And at that time, you just could imagine that when the armies try to attack the Israel, and suddenly the earthquake happened, and then the earth will be divided, and all of the enemy being shunned into the home, right? Or it could be just like the wall of Jericho, that God could use an earthquake and destroy the city. How God used the earthquake to destroy the armies. Maybe at that time we just could imagine today that when we have the earthquake as 9.1, it just happened just a few weeks ago, and it's already caused a big tsunami. I could imagine on that day, during this coalition attack Israel, God can send about 12.1 earthquake, and immediately the earth was shaken and the armies were so afraid that they would run all over, right? It could be. God can do that. So first of all, God used, the Bible said, it's a massive earthquake. So if today we said that the big earthquake like 9.1 or 10, maybe the massive earthquake could be 15, right? The ratio could be 15 or even 20. And not only that, God can also use the confusion. God suddenly made the invader or the country to be confused. And then they turn to each other and they fight one another. You still remember? Many times this happened in the book of Judges. God can do that. He has the miracle, He has the power, and He knows how to protect Israel. And He just turned immediately the mind of the people. Now, recently, I just read a very small story, but it's good also give a very powerful illustration here. Someone put about 100 red ants and 100 black ants in a box, and then just close the cap. Then, in a very normal situation, they don't fight with each other. But when someone begins to shake the box or the jar, shake the jar, and immediately the red ants and the black ant they fight with each other, they kill one another. You see, with just one shake, the peaceful ants are living together, begin to fight with each other. Could you imagine if God just switched, whoop, and said, okay, look at Russia, you are my enemies. And then the Turkish will say, Russians are my enemies. So the Turkish immediately just get their weapons and shoot at the Russian. Or maybe the Russian have a switch. Or maybe Iran is going to deceive us. So we have to kill them, to destroy them, or else we will be killed in the war. We never know. But you see that how God can bring the confusion among this army, and then they just attack one another instead of attacking the Israel. God has many ways to protect His children. And God already proven that in the book, chapter 7, in 2 Chronicles chapter 20. On those stories, you can go back and read about this. Or God can also, in verse number 22, He is going to send a lot of plagues and disease, or we call the pandemics. When the coalition came to attack Israel, suddenly they feel very itchy and look one another. Oh, you have a chronic disease, so everybody just threw the weapons and they just run away. Or because of the diseases, you just remember about the plague in Egypt when God used Moses, and Pharaoh was so stubborn he didn't want to let the people of God to go out of Egypt. God just sent the plague, and at last, even Pharaoh must agree to let the people of God to go out. And in the same way, today, God can do that. Not only about the massive earthquake, about the confusion of the enemies, not only about the plague and the disease, but God also sent the torrential rain, the hailstone, the fire, and the burning sulfur. Oh my goodness. Israel doesn't need to fight anything. They just stood there and get out the camera and record how God just delivered the nation. And the whole world began to put the camera on and see the rain will fall down on the enemy. The hailstone will drop on them. The fire will burn among them. And then the burning sulfur will burn them just like Sodom and Gomorrah. The Israel just stand there. It's just like the children of God. Just stand there, worship the Lord and pray and say hallelujah. And the coalition being destroyed. Maybe when I explain this one, maybe some of you will think that, oh, our God is horrible. No. Our God is protecting His children. It's just like I am the Father. And I have to protect my children. I don't want to fight anyone. I don't want to have war with anyone. But when my enemy just come and to destroy my children, as a father, I must protect my children. Amen. Even though I don't want the enemies to be harmed, but because of their wickedness, they receive the justice of God, and it is God who sends the punishment upon them. And in the same way today, as the children of God, for 7 months, and we can see that they have to bury the dead. For 7 years to burn the weapons, or we can see even the war continue to take place. And the special team are assigned to mark and to dispose the bones and the body. It was horrible. But it will remind you and I that even in the midst of the most horrible thing, our God is still with us. Even though the hostility of the enemies are against God and His children, and it's continued to increase, but God's promise of protection will never fail. Even though the enemies are overwhelming and powerful, let us remember that our God's power is never been undermined, because God has promised to Israel, God has promised to His children that we are the apples of His eye. Amen. So I don't know what are the things that make you tremble right now, shaken right now, threatened right now, fearful right now. But let it just come to the presence of the Lord. And let God to protect us. And He's going to send the wall of fire to be surrounding us, to protect us from all the attack of the enemies when we trust in His power, when we trust in His promise, when we trust in His unfailing word.